Welcome back to Train Signal's Citrix XenApp training. You're watching Navigating Delivery Services Console lesson. This is going to be a relatively short lesson. What I want to do in this lesson is I want to set the framework and introduce you to the Delivery Services Console, which is the management console where you're going to be spending most of your time administering your Citrix XenApp environment. Now, for those of you that are familiar with XenApp and have been using it for years, you'll know that the evolution of the management console has taken a while. We started off with the Citrix Management Console, and before that there were several other management tools that would allow you to manage the environment. It wasn't very centralized. And for a period of time there was always the Citrix Management Console, and there was the Access Management Console. So there was the CMC and there was the AMC. So there was a lot of different management consoles, and you could do certain things in certain consoles but not everything in one place. And it really took Citrix a long period of time to integrate all of these and to be able to centralize them in a single management console. For that reason, I wanted to take you through what it looks like, where are some of the features now, what is the construct, especially if you haven't used it before. If this is your first time using XenApp with XenApp 6, I want to give you a little bit of an overview on what to expect from a management console perspective. So we're going to talk about the discovery process, how you discover objects within your management console. We're going to talk about My Views and how you can set up views that would make it easier for you to find the objects that you're responsible for. This is especially helpful if you're in a large organization. We're going to talk about the configuration tools object within the Delivery Services Console. We're going to talk about XenApp, which is where you're going to be doing most of your configuration and management. So there's an object within the management console called XenApp, and we're going to go through that. We're going to talk about a little bit about alerts, and I'm going to talk a little bit about work groups. So from a presentation perspective, it's going to be relatively short, so let's go ahead and dig in and start exploring and navigating the Delivery Services Console. Alright, so we're back on our Citrix XenApp server, XA01. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Start, All Programs. We're going to click on Citrix. We're going to expand Management Consoles, and we're going to click on Citrix Delivery Services Console. Now you'll notice that the first thing that comes up is the discovery process. But before we talk about the discovery process, it's worth mentioning that the Citrix Delivery Services Console is built around Microsoft's MMC 3.0 technology. So technically, under the hoods, the Citrix Delivery Services Console can be viewed as another snap-in to MMC 3.0. So that was worth mentioning. Now, what is the discovery process? Typically, the first time you run your Delivery Services Console on a new computer, the discovery process is going to launch automatically. The discovery process is simply a method by which you can query for your Citrix objects via IMA. And the way to do that is the discovery process comes up. It's going to come up with a wizard. We're going to click on Next. You're going to select which objects you want to query, which extensions are available out there that you can add to this Delivery Services Console so you can manage them. So I know that I have a XenApp farm, so I want to add the extensions. I want to be able to manage my XenApp farm from this Delivery Services Console. As a result, I'm able to query against the XenApp infrastructure and gather information for my farm so I can add it and manage it. By the same token, I don't have any infrastructure. I don't have anything configured for single sign-on. That's more of a platinum feature. I don't have anything configured for that. So if I go forward with the query, it's going to ask me for some server, for something to query in order to gather information about the single sign-on infrastructure. Considering I don't have that product installed or configured, we're going to go ahead and uncheck this because there's no reason to query against it. Now I have XenApp configured. We're going to click Next. Now, you can add the local server, so if you want the discovery process to query against the local server, you can simply click Add Local Computer. If you want it, if this was installed on your desktop, for example, or on your laptop, and obviously adding local computer in that case wouldn't help, so you can click on Add and add the fully qualified domain or the IP address of any of your XenApp servers. Click OK, it would add them to the list, and as such, the Delivery Services Console discovery process can query that computer for the information that it needs. So I'm going to click Next. And that's about it for the discovery process. Once it gathers all the information it needs, you can click on finish. If there was any errors, you can find them in here. You can double click on them and you'll get more information about that particular error, and then you can resolve or remedy the situation if it comes up. So I'm going to click on finish, and you'll notice that the XenApp infrastructure has already been added. Now my farm is Encom. That was the farm name that we gave during the setup and configuration of my XenApp server. And underneath my farm, I have all of these objects. Now let's go real quick through these objects, and then we'll circle back and take a look at the different objects and components within the delivery services console itself. So let's go ahead and expand this for a better view. Now obviously this is the top of the root, this is the farm. Now for those of you that come from, that have used XenApp before, or presentation server, you typically were able to right click on the farm and drag down to the farm properties in order for you to be able to manage it or configure it. So you'll notice you still have the farm properties here, but it's significantly reduced. There is literally nothing in here with the exception of the configuration logging, which you can enable or disable. For you configure the database. We'll talk about configuration logging a little later on in the next lesson. So for now, I just want to focus on the fact that if you right click the farm and go to properties, you'll notice you don't have anything. All of the settings that were previously here, ICA, bandwidth, server, everything that was previously here has now been moved into policies. And when we talk about policies in the policies lesson, we'll do an extended walkthrough, and I'll show you where everything is at today. But I wanted to mention this just in case it catches you by surprise. So for those of you that have never used it, you'll notice that when you select the farm on the left, you'll have several different tabs here on the right, and every tab will display different types of information. So for example, the contents tab is going to give you everything that's under the farm. If you go on information, information will give you a little more information about the name of the farm, the current session count, the servers in the farm, the published applications, published desktops, published content in the farm. So it gives you a little bit of a snapshot of an overview about what's going on. If you click on alerts, any types of alerts that might come up, any errors of any sort that require attention will be listed over here, so you can take a look at them and remedy them very quickly. From a user's perspective, if there are any users that are connected, you'll be able to see them. Offline sessions, again, will be displayed here. Configured file, this is basically information, file types, configured file types, what types are configured that to respond or are configured with XenApp so that XenApp can launch applications, etc. Everything, this is basically informational at this point. It'll give you the current settings, so once we configure more farm settings, you'll be able to see more settings down here. Right now, the only thing you see under the farm settings is the configuration logging. Hotfix, this gives you information about your hotfixes, what are the different hotfixes that are installed on the farm, on the different servers in the farm, actually. And then you have a hotfix summary. So you'll notice that XenApp 1, this is the product revision or the product version. This is the hotfix count. So again, it'll give you all the details about all the different servers in your farm with more information about what hotfix levels and service packs have been installed. You can click on choose columns here and it'll be able to give you, you can add columns or remove columns. So if you wanted it to display in a certain view, you can also modify that so that it is exactly the way you'd like to see it. So because I tend to do this because sometimes there's just too much information, I'm not really interested in it, so I customize my view by doing that. Let's see what else is up here. Hotfix comparison result, this is pretty cool because it'll display all the servers, and if there's any discrepancy between the servers, you'll be able to see that XenApp 01, for example, has feature pack 1, whereas XenApp 6 doesn't have a feature pack. So this is a quick snapshot that could tell you the different feature packs or different hotfixes that are installed on each one of your XenApp servers in order to keep them consistent. You want to keep all your XenApp servers consistent unless there's a compelling reason or there's a particular hotfix that breaks something that you don't want to install it for a particular application. But if not, for all intents and purposes, all XenApp servers should be at the same hotfix and feature pack level. Administrators, we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the next lesson when we talk about role-based access and delegated access, so I'm going to keep that for later. Applications is where you would do most of your publishing of applications and desktops and contents, and we have a lesson dedicated to that, but I'm just giving you a walkthrough here to see what's going on. Moving on to history. History will show you everything that's happened on your farm, every task, every configuration change, so on and so forth. Considering we haven't configured the logging configuration database yet, you don't have anything to display, and the farm is relatively new and fresh anyway. Load balancing policies, we're going to talk about those extensively in later lessons, but you'll notice that every one of those nodes that I click on will display tabs that gives you more information, and almost every one of those nodes has an information button or tab that gives you a snapshot about what's going on with regards to this node, so you can find it helpful. And then the alerts tab here will give you alerts that are very customized, that are very selective to this particular node, so that you're not cluttered with alerts about everything. So if you wanted to focus your attention on just, hey, show me what's going on with regards to load balancing policies alerts, you can come here and select that, and it'll display that for you. The load evaluators, there are 2 load evaluators by default. This is basically the criteria by which XenApp will distribute new incoming sessions to the different XenApp servers. So by default, which is what we have here, the way that XenApp will distribute the load is based on the user count on a server. So if XenApp A or XenApp 01 has 20 users and XenApp 02 has 3 users, then the next time a new user connects, that user will automatically go to the server with the least amount of users. This is what the default policy stipulates. The advanced policy gives you a little more granularity, it's a little smarter. So instead of just load balancing the servers based on the user count, it load balances the servers based on the CPU utilization and the memory utilization. So you can, in effect, very much have a XenApp 01 server with 2 users on it, but with a CPU and memory utilization of 70%, and then have XenApp 02 with 20 users on it, but memory and CPU utilization of 15%. The next incoming session will go to XenApp 02 even though it has a higher user count. So we'll talk about those later in greater detail, but you'll notice up here again, it gives you a bunch of tabs that you can browse through. Again, alerts, information are almost standard about everything. Usage by application, this will give you a report about which application is being used and how much it's being used. This is good if you wanted to justify more infrastructure, or if your boss or your manager requests information about what's going on with particular applications, if they're doing billbacks to certain departments that have requested these applications. This would be useful and helpful here. Usage by server would be something that you would be able to use because you're able to generate that report and take a look at the historicals of that particular server. So these 2 tabs are very important to note. Policies I'm going to leave for later. We're going to spend 2 lessons around policies, so I'm going to leave those for later. But again, alerts and computers are 2 tabs here. Servers is where you'll have all of your XenApp servers listed. Again, you have several tabs here with more information about who's logged in, how many users are currently logged into the XenApp server, the hotfix details of this particular server. The same hotfix stuff that we saw at the farm level, now we're seeing at a more granular level with the server. Now if you select that server itself, again you'll see the same tabs. You have the information which gives you a snapshot about what's going on. So if I right click XenApp 01, for those of you that have used this before, you'll notice that there are no more properties. So you can't go into the properties of that particular XenApp server. You have other tasks that you can select, but again, it's very, very limited as far as what you can do now. You can no longer manage or configure that particular XenApp server the same way you used to be able to by right-clicking it or going to properties. The other thing that I want to mention before we move on is, for those of you that remember the access management console, we had a second column here. We always had a column on the left, a second column for quick access, quick links, quick tasks that we could select. That also has now disappeared. All of the configuration of the particular server has moved into policies. Now, with regards to worker groups are really cool and something new with XenApp 6. What worker groups allows you to do is, typically when you're building your XenApp environment, especially in larger XenApp farms, we tend to silo our servers. So we'll have servers that are very tied to certain applications. You'll have 10 servers of a CRM application, and you'll have 10 servers for community-based access and Office applications, and so on and so forth. And you grow your infrastructure by adding more servers into that silo of servers. Now, previously, the way for us to organize those was, you'd create folders, and you'd just move the servers under the right folder based on the application, or based on some kind of a common denominator that you can group, that will make sense for you to group them under. Now, with worker groups takes it one step further, and I'll talk more about worker groups when we talk about it in the policies lesson. But just to give you an example, you can create a worker group, add servers of the same type or that serve the same function, or maybe in the same geographical region, into that worker group, and then you can apply policies against them. You can publish applications to them. You can even take it as far as you can create an OU in Active Directory, and every time you add a XenApp server to that OU, it automatically adds that server to this work group and automatically gets all the policies that are applied to this work group. So very handy, very useful. We're going to talk about this extensively again. Zones, we talked about that in the earlier lesson when we introduced zones and what it does. Today I have one zone. All of my servers are in this particular zone. If I have another geographic region, maybe I have another floor, maybe I have another data center. If I have another geographic region where there's XenApp servers, I can most certainly create another zone and add those servers into that zone. Zones are the equivalent of subnets, so to speak, where you're grouping your XenApp servers for localized IMA traffic to improve performance. Single sign-on, we're not going to talk about. It's outside of the scope. That's for Citrix's Password Manager product and allows you to extend single sign-on. Now, what's the power of the Delivery Services Console? Why do I have single sign-on here? You'll notice that the Delivery Services Console is a very modularized console. You can have extensions, you can have plugins, so to speak, that can plug into it and extend its capacity, extend its features. For example, single sign-on. Think of it as a plugin or as an extension to the Delivery Services Console, which would allow you to manage more components in your Citrix infrastructure in general, whether it's XenApp or single sign-on or other things. So think about it this way. So the XenApp and single sign-on, you'll notice that they're at the same level. So from a single sign-on perspective, if you had any single sign-on infrastructure, you'd be able to manage it from here as well. Now, from a configuration tools perspective, configuration tools is just another node. Think of it as any third-party stuff that Citrix wants to add to the Delivery Services Console. It has a place where it can plug it in. So for example, in this case, it has the hotfix management under the configuration tools. Now, you'll notice that Citrix Resources is the parent node, is the node that's going to group everything under your Citrix infrastructure. These are all your Citrix resources. Now, there's nothing that's stopping Citrix from tomorrow integrating Xen Desktop Management, for example, under the Delivery Services Console. It would be a node under here that expands that, and now you have the ability to manage all of your Citrix infrastructure from the Delivery Services Console because it's very modularized, because it's based on MMC and allows plugins. It could be a framework that could group a lot of the Citrix management consoles across the different products, and you can manage them here and organize them in here as well. My views is interesting, especially if you're in a large organization. If you're in a large organization, you're typically not going to be responsible for the entire farm. You're not going to be responsible for all the applications and all the servers. You're going to be responsible for a subset of it. Now, without views, you would have to log in and you would have to browse to the servers you're responsible for, browse to the applications that you're responsible for. And I've seen Citrix farms with 2,000 applications in them. Trust me, that can become very difficult when you're navigating through folders to get to the applications that you're responsible for. What My Views allows you to do is it allows you to configure the resources, the Citrix resources that you are responsible for, and customize your view so that you're seeing only these resources. It's really not more than just pointers that basically puts everything in the way you like it, just these servers, just these applications, just this content, so that you view it easier and you're able to find your stuff in an easier manner. Now, from a search perspective, if you're if you need to find something, if you need to find an object because there's a lot of objects in the environment, and you need to look for something, I mean, search is pretty self-explanatory. You can look for any object within the Citrix infrastructure here, and it's going to find it. Alerts is going to give you alerts on what's going on in your Citrix infrastructure in general. This is going to give you a global view of the alerts across the different components within the environment. If you wanted more granular views, you saw how every one of the nodes on the left here had an alerts tab that allows you to view alerts specifically for that particular item. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this lesson is we ran the discovery process when the Delivery Services Console originally launched. Now, that's a one-time process that you do every time the Delivery Services Console is installed on a new computer or is run for the first time. Now, what if the server that you're running the query against in the discovery process isn't working for some reason, and you need to reconfigure the discovery process so that it can query a different server, or if you're just trying to query a different server for whatever reason? There are two things you can do. If some things aren't showing up properly, your plugins aren't showing up properly, and you just want to run the discovery process against the same server, you can select Configuration Tools, right-click, and select Run Discovery. It's going to run the discovery again. Now, if you wanted to change the server against which you're running the discovery, you can select Citrix Resources, right-click, and then select Configure and Run Discovery, and this will launch the wizard all over again, and you can go through it and change the server, change the components that you're querying, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to mention that just in case you were wondering how you can re-access that discovery process once more. Now, this was a relatively short lesson, folks. We're going to switch back to our presentation, and we're going to recap what we've learned. Don't you wish all the lessons were this short? Nah, don't bet on it. You got some beefy lessons coming your way in the next few lessons when we get into policies and so on and so forth. So we started off by talking about the different consoles, the evolution of the different management consoles that Citrix has introduced over the years. And again, we talked about, for those of you that have been using Citrix for a while, since the Citrix MetaFrame XP with the Citrix Management Console and then the Access Management Console, there was always two management consoles, and you can do certain tasks in this console and certain other tasks in another console. You have to launch both of them at different intervals. So it was kind of annoying, and it took Citrix quite a while to be able to centralize all of these services, all of these tools into a centralized management console, which is what they've done with the delivery services here. And they've come a long way. They really have, in order to give you a single pane of glass. Now, we talked about the discovery process and how the discovery process allows you to run a query, a discovery against certain assets within your Citrix infrastructure. For example, in our case, we ran it against the XenApp infrastructure, which gave us a response of the farm, and we were able to navigate it and so on and so forth. But the discovery process, you can point against your single sign-on infrastructure, against other Citrix-related infrastructures, and it would allow you to manage them from the same management console. We also talked about the fact that the Discovery Services console is an MMC, is a Microsoft MMC 3.0 console, so to speak, so you could technically snap it into just MMC itself if you really needed to. We talked about my views and how it relates to you within a larger organization, and the fact that you would be responsible for a subset of the farm, and you have the ability within the Delivery Services console to customize a view of the console for yourself. Have all your resources, all your servers, all your applications, so you don't have to go browse through everyone's applications and resources to get to the ones that you are concerned with. We talked about configuration tools and how it allows sort of like these third-party tools, these extensions, these plugins that Citrix has. For example, you already have the hotfix management under the configuration tools, and how you can snap things under it. We talked about the XenApp node and how all of the farm-related settings, all of the farm-related management happens under the XenApp node. We talked about alerts in general. So you have different places where you can view alerts. You can view alerts for all of your Citrix infrastructure. You can view alerts only for XenApp and XenApp related. And you can drill down to the different components, the different nodes on the left, and view alerts just for that. So you can get very, very granular with what you can do with regards to alerts. We talked about work groups as well, and the fact that from a Citrix administrator perspective, we're always siloing our servers. A particular application will get a subset of servers. Worker groups allows us to logically group these servers, but extends the capabilities of more than just grouping it for organizational purposes, which is what you can use for folders, right? Worker groups allows you to publish applications against this group of servers, allows you to create an OU so that every time you add a server in Active Directory, it automatically adds it to this worker group. It extends the functionality. You can configure policies against the worker group. So it just makes it easier for you to manage, especially if you have farms with hundreds of servers. It gives you a subset, or it gives you an easier way of managing your servers. Finally, I hope this lesson was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.